What's up everybody, it's me, Couch Mills here, and in this video we're going to talk about the Hero Balance Developer Update today, where a ton of changes are going through, including changes to Sombra, Genji, Zarya, Diva, and Kiriko. So we're going to break it all down, talk about it, and talk about the implications of it. Smash that subscribe if you enjoy these deep dives into the dev notes, and let's get right in. Now, they said that they've been humbled with all the players joining, 25 million players, yada yada. Let's get into the actual juice of the article, which is the changes. First off, Sombra. Hack lockout duration reduced from 1.75 to 1.5 seconds. Hacked enemies are no longer valid targets for hacking for the duration of the effect. Hacked damage multiplier reduced from 40 to 25%. Now, this is what they had to say about it. With Sombra's rework, she gained a lot more damage to help account for the reduced ability lockout duration of hack. This has proven to be too deadly for a flanker with easy access to the enemy backlines, and we've similarly had to adjust the damage output of heroes like Tracer, Reaper, and now Genji in the 5v5 format. She can also no longer channel hack on an already hacked target, as feedback indicated the reduced cooldown combined with hacking from stealth proved to be too frustrating for many players. This is essentially a per target cooldown that enables hack to keep its current 4-second cooldown for potentially hacking multiple targets. Now, this is a pretty big change to Sombra. Will she still be very strong? Yes. Will she have to be more specific of who she hacks and when she hacks? Also, yes. Not being able to do 40% more damage is a big deal. 25 means that it's going to be a lot harder for her to potentially kill off a Zen and, kill off someone that she's hacking right away. That person's going to have more time to get peeled. And also, just the slight change here to the hack lockout duration. I think that it's a good change to Sombra. Sombra was a very oppressive DPS, and she's still looking to be pretty strong. The fact that she can hack while invis is still just insane, and they didn't touch that at all, so yeah. Next up, we got to talk about Genji, and this is a very, very controversial one. Maximum ammo reduced from 30 to 24. Shuriken damage reduced from 29 to 27. The dev comment said this: Genji is a hero that has greatly benefited from the move to 5v5. Changing to a single tank and the reduction of crowd control has meant Genji has less obstacles in his way. However, he hasn't received tuning updates since he wasn't actively in the meta until launch, something also informed by our general preference to avoid preemptive adjustments when possible. We also saw that in early beta tests, other flanking heroes such as Tracer and Reaper were also significantly more effective in Overwatch 2. These changes will bring Genji more in line with the other flanking damage heroes. Now, I know that a lot of people are going to be split on this, right? I'm someone who plays Genji myself, and I love that Genji has been meta for a little while, and especially coming off of Overwatch 1, where Genji was basically just super beat down ever since Brig was added to the game. We never had a really solid Genji meta, except for a very small sliver of time. And honestly, these hurt. Like, these changes hurt. The shuriken damage is a big deal for a lot of Genji's combos going in, a lot of his breakpoints. The maximum ammo isn't as big of a deal as the shuriken damage, but it will still be felt. You'll have a little bit less uptime. But is Genji going to be unplayable post these changes? Probably not. He's still going to be pretty good, pretty playable. I highly doubt, though, that he's going to be far and away the best DPS or one of the best DPS. And specifically with both Genji and Sombra getting big hits here, but Sojourn not being touched when she's already the strongest DPS right now, she's just going to be even more picked and more preferred. Genji is still going to be a good pick. I think he's going to be closer in line with Tracer, as before he was a little bit above her. But it's still really painful. It's a painful change, and a lot of Genji players are not going to like this change. But we're going to have to wait and see how things develop over time. What this looks like to me overall, these balance changes, is that they're trying to reduce the power level of the top tier DPS and tanks and bring them more in line with the rest of the roster. A lot of people are saying supports are underpowered, and instead of buffing all the supports to match the power level of some of these dominant characters, they're trying to bring down the max output of power for many of the top characters in the game. Although I don't really know why Sojourn's not on here. We'll talk more about that at the end. Next up, we got to talk about Zarya, and this is a big one. Barrier duration reduced from 2.5 to 2 seconds. Barrier cooldown increased from 10 to 11 seconds. Now, the devs had this to say: Early player sentiment predicted Zarya as one of the weakest solo tanks in 5v5, though her high damage potential and barrier uptime have proven to be very effective. For opponents, feedback has indicated this can feel as though Zarya has a very limited window of vulnerability, which feels difficult to deal with when combined with her rampaging damage potential. These changes will reduce the barrier uptime, making it slightly more difficult for her to gain energy, and will provide enemies with more time to deal damage to her. Now, this is a huge change. Like, honestly, very, very, very big deal. Having a whole half second less on your barrier duration is going to make it a lot easier for you to punish Zarya. Having a whole extra second on the barrier cooldown means that Zaryas need to be much more disciplined with their bubble usage. And I think overall, this is a really good direction with Zarya. They're not changing anything about her fundamentally. Like, she plays the same. She just is less powerful. And I think that that is the right direction to take her. Now, if I'm being honest, though, I don't know if this is enough. I don't know that this is enough to just, you know, move her from being as strong as she is, especially at the high ranks, because Zarya is so damn strong that I don't really think that this actually hits her quite enough, although it's gonna have to depend on the entire context of the meta. And when you change a whole bunch of characters like this, a lot of things can change. But I do like, you know, taking balance one chunk at a time, and instead of just completely gutting a character, you just, you know, you nerf some of their numbers some. You analyze the data, you watch and see what happens, and then you can revisit her later on. Next up, we got to talk about D.Va. Now, D.Va fusion cannon spread increased from 3.5 to 3.75, so less damage overall because the spread is bigger. And then booster impact damage reduced from 25 to 15, so less burst damage with that booster impact. Devs said D.Va ended up feeling too deadly after the last round of changes, given how resilient she can be with the improved defense matrix. Both R stats and high-level player feedback regarded her as not effective enough before that compared with other tanks, so this is a partial revert to establish some middle ground there. Now, this is another example of them not really hitting this character that hard. Like, this is a sizable nerf to her damage and her burst potential, but that's really not the true reason why D.Va is so damn strong. She has freaking an insane amount of defense matrix. She really can't die. I think that especially if Zarya becomes weaker, D.Va becomes stronger as a result. So I would imagine that both Zarya and D.Va need more changes in the future. But like I said, I'm okay with them not just completely deleting characters when characters are decent. It's okay to balance in chunks as long as those chunks come consistently enough, not like the Brig changes in Overwatch 1 where they balanced in chunks like months and months at a time with huge gaps in between. Definitely not that, but you get what I'm saying. You don't have to completely delete a character because then oftentimes you have an overcorrection that you have to then rebuff a character if you want to make them good again, and it just becomes a mess. So I do like this approach, although I don't think the Zarya and the D.Va changes are enough to make a huge impact on these characters, and there is a potential fear that D.Va becomes like very, very strong, and she just becomes the new best tank, right? If Zarya becomes too weak, hypothetically. Last up, we got to talk about Kiriko. Now, Kiriko's swift step invulnerability duration reduced from 0.4 to 0.25 seconds. The devs said this invulnerability window is primarily intended to help avoid instantly dying to something unseen after teleporting through walls, but it ended up being a little too long and led to some confusion when shooting at Kiriko. Our current goal is to deploy these changes in an upcoming update on November 15th, 2022. Should that plan change, we will be sure to update you. Now, before we get there, though, let's go back to the Kiriko Swift Step invulnerability duration. I think that this is a good change. Honestly, the fact that you could use the Swift Step invulnerability and sometimes you would shoot a Kiriko, but she wouldn't actually take damage, it was a little frustrating, a little confusing. I understand what they're saying, and I think this is fine. Kiriko seems like she's still going to be in a fine place, and honestly, this is a minor change as compared to a lot of the bigger ones that happened in this patch. Now, before we end this, though, I do want to talk about that elephant in the room, which is Sojourn being absolutely dominant, but there is no mention of her here, and there is no potential changes even talked about, which is really, really strange to me. I'm not entirely sure why they are avoiding specifically touching pretty much the most overtuned character that we've seen in quite some time. Now, I will admit, the one thing that I would say is that Sojourn doesn't feel oppressive except when you climb to the highest ranks. When you're talking about Grandmaster Plus, Sojourn all of a sudden feels like an absolute dominant force. But before that, when people aren't hitting consistent rail shots, she feels like one DPS you could play of many. And perhaps that's why they're not touching her as much. Because unlike many of these other characters, Sombra, who's really frustrating to deal with at lower ranks, even Genji, who's super frustrating to deal with at any rank, Zarya, who's just been dominating every single rank, Diva, who just feels like she could never die. These are characters that are affecting every single rank, while Sojourn, even though she's obviously completely busted, she's not really destroying like plat or gold or bronze or silver. So like, that is my only logical explanation for why they're not touching her. But I would hope that they put her on their radar in the future, because it just seems like she's kind of getting a free pass here when she shouldn't be. If you're going to reduce the power level of everybody, then Sojourn definitely needs to be on that list. But definitely let me know how you feel about all these changes. Which ones do you agree with? Which ones do you disagree with? Let me know right now. And thank you so much for coming by. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.